All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a deeply relatable and honestly pretty complex topic: the delicate balance of parenting, the sheer weight of expectations, and those unintended emotional ripples they tend to create. It's a fascinating look at how our deepest love and our highest ambitions can, well, sometimes cross wires.
And it really all starts with a rather profound question that we need to sit with for a second. Are your high standards actually preparing your child for life, or are they inadvertently pushing them away? It's a dilemma right at the heart of the parent-child relationship, and we're going to unpack exactly how that dynamic unfolds.
So let's look at part one, intentions versus reality.
Okay, let's dive into this. A lot of parents genuinely believe that by setting the bar incredibly high, they're essentially providing a suit of armor, right? They're preparing their kids for a tough, unforgiving, hyper-competitive world. And that comes from a place of deep protective care. Parents know how hard life can be, so they push. But the internal reality for the child is often completely different. See, a child doesn't fully grasp the harshness of the outside world yet. They only know their immediate environment. So instead of feeling prepared and armored up, they're quietly feeling crushed. They start believing they can literally never fully meet those expectations. The intention is armor, for sure, but the reality? It's this impossible, exhausting weight they carry every single day.
Think of it kind of like teaching a teenager how to drive. Parents feel like they're just offering a flashlight of guidance and wisdom, passing down hard-earned lessons, pointing out the potholes ahead. But on the receiving end, that flashlight often feels a lot more like an unrelenting, glaring spotlight of harsh evaluation and constant pressure. What the parent intends as a helpful mid-course correction, the child internalizes as a loud and clear message that they simply aren't trusted to navigate the road themselves.
Which brings us to part two. The cost of conditional approval. Look at this quote. Praise comes less easily than criticism. Because of the incredibly high standards being set, parents often lean heavily into correcting mistakes just to ensure excellence. But the unintended psychological cost here is massive. Human brains are naturally wired for threat detection, right? And to a child, a parent's disappointment is a huge subconscious threat. So kids end up wiring their brains to vividly remember those corrections, while the words of encouragement, they kind of just slip away. The negative feedback sticks like Velcro, and the positive feedback slides off like Teflon. It leaves the child constantly scanning their environment and themselves for flaws.
And this creates a really fascinating, albeit heartbreaking paradox. On the outside, you've got the absolute perfect child. They look highly responsible, disciplined, straight A's, always following the rules. They're literally the kid everyone else's parents point to. But if we peel back the layers, they're struggling deeply with self-doubt and an absolute paralysis when it comes to the fear of making mistakes. It's that classic duck on the water scenario, gliding smoothly on the surface but paddling frantically underneath. The discipline we admire on the outside is actually fueled almost entirely by anxiety rather than passion or curiosity.
Because of this dynamic, kids learn a really dangerous lesson: that love, attention, and approval are entirely conditional. They start to believe they're only as good as their latest grade, their last trophy, or their most recent tangible success. They desperately seek validation through those achievements, which means they're never really given the mental space to develop true foundational self-acceptance. They get stuck on this never-ending treadmill of accomplishments just to feel worthy of connection. And the terrifying question always lingering in the back of their mind is, well, what happens if I stop running? You can really see this emotional asymmetry in everyday family communication. Just picture the dinner table. The conversation is completely dominated by performance, achievement, and constant improvement. How did the math test go? Did you make varsity? What's your plan for the SATs? But look at what's left completely unspoken: emotions, fears, vulnerabilities. Nobody is asking, hey, are you feeling overwhelmed lately? The child learns very quickly that their internal feelings just aren't nearly as valuable as their external output.
Now let's shift to part three, the growing distance.
These early childhood patterns, they don't just magically disappear. In the early years, that foundation of conditional approval is firmly laid. And as the child grows older, they naturally become way more emotionally reserved. Why? Well, because sharing personal struggles or failures in the past usually resulted in an unprompted lecture or more criticism. So they learn to protect themselves. They essentially put their parents on an information diet, shutting down and withholding the messy parts of their lives. By the time they reach adulthood, their paths diverge, with the adult child keeping their daily life at arm's length just to protect their own mental peace.
And this is exactly where inevitable family tension erupts. On one side, you have the parents' rigid standards, their carefully laid plans, and their very specific definition of success completely cemented in place. But on the other side, you've got the adult child's independently chosen path. When that chosen path doesn't perfectly align with the parents' long-held expectations, maybe they choose art over law, or they decide not to have kids, or they move across the country, the friction can be immense, and it's incredibly painful for everyone involved.
It often results in this subtle, quiet parent-child rivalry. This happens when maintaining authority and being right becomes more important to the parent than actually understanding their child's unique perspective. It completely fractures the bond. There's still genuine underlying care there, absolutely, but prioritizing authority over empathy creates a vast emotional distance. It's a tragic irony, really. The parent pushes entirely out of love, but the method? It creates an impenetrable brick wall between them.
Moving on to our final section, Part 4, Guidance Balanced with Acceptance. But hey, it absolutely doesn't have to stay this way. The crucial pivot here is how we define the role of the parent moving forward. We need to shift from being a constant evaluator to being a true mentor. Mentorship actively builds confidence. It guides, it supports, asks curious questions, and lifts up. Constant judgment, on the other hand, acts like a heavy anchor, creating deep insecurity. A judge looks at what went wrong and penalizes. A mentor looks at what went wrong and asks, okay, what do we learn and how do we tackle it next time? Transforming from a judge into a mentor is the absolute key to repairing and strengthening that relationship. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from our source material today. Children grow best when guidance is balanced with acceptance. Having high standards isn't inherently a bad thing. Setting goals and encouraging excellence are wonderful parts of parenting. But those standards can only truly foster healthy, sustainable growth when they're paired with absolute, unconditional acceptance of who the child is as a human being. Flaws, quirks, failures, and all. The child needs to know that the love remains exactly the same, whether they bring home a trophy or come home totally empty-handed. So, as we wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you reflecting deeply on your own relationships, whether you're looking at this through the lens of a parent or a child. Will you choose authority, or will you choose understanding? The answer to that question might just change the entire trajectory of a family's future. Thanks so much for exploring this with me. Keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.